Hey guys, I'm Uriza. This story is all about what if Naruto is the reincarnation of Hashirama and can remember his past life. The Yondaime Hokage unknowingly makes a change during the sealing, the consequences of which are unimaginable for both Naruto and Konoha. What do these consequences mean for Naruto? Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 6. F. Jiraiya just stood there, frozen. Kushina was staring at her son, her mouth opening and closing with no words coming out. Jiraiya was the first to react. Of all the lives you had to live before this one, it had to be him. This is great, he said enthusiastically with a thumbs up sign. Naruto grinned at the man's response. Jiraiya reminded him of how he used to be as Hashirama. How he still was, to a large extent. He and his godfather would reconcile just fine. Because of my study of seals, I know you are still my son, Naruto. The unexpected keeps happening to the Namikaze family. Having the reborn Hashirama as a son. Minato would be so proud. I am too. So proud, Kushina said wonderingly, still unable to believe. She shook her head, still trying to accept Naruto and Hashirama being one. Her little boy was the rebirth of the most revered ninja since the Sage of the Six Paths. Naruto sent a sly glance towards Kakashi. You reacted better than Kakashi-sensei, Kaa-san, and Ero-senin. He only fainted. Kakashi managed to look indignant even with his mask on. Jiraiya and Kushina were snorting with laughter, imagining Sharingan no Kakashi fainting like an academy fangirl. I'll get you for this, Naruto, threatened Kakashi. Kushina then looked at Hiruzen and Kakashi. I hate asking this, but all this seems too surreal to me, Hokage-sama. Do you believe Naruto? Hiruzen nodded without hesitation. He is Hashirama-sama reborn, without a doubt. That seal there was attuned more to soul than to chakra, and only Hashirama-sama could use it. There is no doubt. Kushina nodded, trying to comprehend the implications in her own chaotic feelings. It was not every parent who learned that their son had such a truly beautiful soul. Also, to convince me, he raised a massive wooden bridge from Nami to the mainland with just a single hand seal. Only Shodai-sama could ever use Mokuton with such skill and power. No genin, however talented, could do that. It is acquired through decades of experience only, said Kakashi. Kushina was stunned. She had no choice but to believe her son after what Kakashi and Hiruzen said. She stared at Naruto with mixed emotions on her face. Love for her son and reverence for his greatness. Minato's idiotic mistake had awakened a legend. Would you prefer Naruto or Hashirama when we are alone, Naruto? She asked. Call me Naruto, Kaa-san. I am still your son, even if I was Hashirama back then. Kushina nodded, looking relieved. It would take her a long time to get used to the reality of Senju Hashirama being born as her son. She would adapt for her son's sake. The Sandaime looked at all of them. I called all of you here primarily to discuss the matter of Orochimaru. Jiraiya, Naruto, you have to stop tailing Kabuto from here on. Our Jounin Gekko Hayate, who was tailing him yesterday, has been killed. Naruto had a sad look on his face, as did Jiraiya and Kakashi. Hayate's death was a great loss to the Jounin, as he was very talented at Kenjutsu. Jiraiya looked at Hiruzen. I assume you called me and Naruto to brief Kushina and Kakashi of our findings, sensei. In part, Jiraiya, Kakashi and Kushina are informed of the essentials of Orochimaru's involvement. They need more specifics. We also need to discuss how we are to meet Orochimaru's invasion with the limited information we have. Jiraiya nodded and turned to Kushina and Kakashi. Naruto here discovered that Orochimaru was planning to use the Edo Tensei to resurrect Hashirama and Tobirama, and use them to kill Sensei. He was unable to resurrect Hashirama, and has found a replacement for him. Kushina was first outraged that Naruto was being sent on such high-level missions at such a young age, but she remembered just who he was. He would be in no danger even if discovered. It would be hard indeed for her to curb her protective instinct as a mother, that too after seeing her son a decade later. Naruto took up the narrative. We know for certain that he will be using 2 Edo Tensei summons, and one of them will be my brother, Tobirama. It will be easy to subdue Tobirama because Orochimaru would not dare bring him back at full strength. Our only worry is the unknown summons. The Sandaime now interjected. We also know that Orochimaru is going to invade with a considerable force of Oto ninja. He will want to kill me personally, so I assume he will be present at the stadium in a disguise. We are still unable to find out what. Kakashi asked, how do we respond then, Hokage-sama? First, we cannot let anyone except the elite Jounin know of this. I have the opportunity to finish off Orochimaru once and for all, and I will take it no matter what. Orochimaru will call off the invasion if he smells too much wariness on our part. We should lay a careful trap. Jiraiya then spoke, we will have 3 teams composed entirely of Umbu, each led by one of us. Kakashi will lead a team to respond to threats within the stadium, Kushina and I will lead teams to guard Kanoha from without. The Jounin will be able to guard the village itself once the invasion happens, under Kakashi's guidance. What will Naruto be doing? Asked a worried Kushina, observing her son who looked calm and solemn. Hiruzen will be there at the stadium to deal with Orochimaru once and for all, and I will be there with him to subdue Tobirama and the unknown summons. I could always beat my brother in a fight even at his full strength. Naruto said. What of the evacuation of the children of the academy? Kakashi asked Hiruzen. We will send Jounin and Genin to oversee their evacuation. The Sandaime looked at them all. There is one last matter. Naruto, your true lineage will be announced after this whole affair is done with. Until then, please keep it under wraps as the Raikage will be visiting. He will be unsettled enough with the Red Death's presence, but knowing that her and Minato's son is still alive will be a matter of alarm for him and the nations. I know politics, Hiruzen. Did you forget who taught you its fundamentals when you were little? Asked Naruto in an amused voice. The Sandaime looked sheepish. Right, sorry sensei. Just making sure. Kakashi, Jiraiya, and Kushina stared, amazed at this interaction. They forgot easily that Naruto used to be Hiruzen's sensei in another lifetime. I need to release the seal, Hiruzen. I am starting to feel the drain. Said Naruto and released it at the nods of assent. When the room jerked back to normal, Naruto spoke to Kushina. Where will you be staying, Kaa-san? Will you go to the Namikaze house you and Tou-san stayed in? Kushina looked regretful. That place holds too many memories for me, Naruto. I will find someplace else. You can stay with me, Kaa-san. Kushina looked uncertain. She wanted to stay with him. How she wanted to. But how would he feel if his mother who left him for so long, for whatever reason, was back in his life so suddenly? You don't want to? Naruto asked, looking vulnerable. Kushina cursed herself. It is not that, Naruto-kun. I would love to stay with you, but I do not wish to impose. Naruto looked happier. There is no question of imposition within family, Kaa-san. They left for his apartment, a couple of blurs flashing through the air. Naruto's apartment. So this is your apartment, Naruto? Yes, Kaa-san, do you like it? Kushina mused to herself as she stared at the rather untidy apartment. It could use some tidying up. Boys, all the same. Minato was just like you know. He used to hiration all over his apartment to tidy up before our date there. She said wistfully, remembering her beloved husband. She looked at Naruto quickly, and asked him the one question eating at her. Naruto, do you truly forgive me for my absence or was it something you just said? Tell me the truth please, son. I can handle it. Tell me the truth about what you feel about me and my actions. Naruto sighed. Look, Kaa-san. I have lived my life as Hashirama with little of motherly love. I have been denied that for the entire duration of my life as Naruto. I have no idea how to accept a mother's love. Kushina was near tears. She would never forgive herself for depriving him of her love as a child, no matter how good her reasons. Excuses and ironclad reasons just became dust for a mother when faced with her child's anguish. The best I had as Naruto was the old man. But you forget something. I may be a child in body, but I was the one who ended the age of warring clans and built Kanoha. I am Senju Hashirama, and I have learned the misery and happiness of life a long time ago. I know all too well to keep family close and to forgive them. Kushina looked at her son with wonder blossoming again in her heart. This was Senju Hashirama speaking. The greatest ninja himself, reborn as her son. Naruto did not notice his mother's fluctuating emotions and continued speaking of feelings long buried. Even if I had no one during this childhood, I had family as Hashirama. Those memories let me lose much of my resentment for you. I may look young, but I am old. Naruto was now feeling the full import of his two lives. Kushina was just staring at her son, he was extraordinary beyond measure. She did not dare interrupt his thoughts as he seemed to be pouring his real feelings out. I know exactly how you are feeling, Kaa-san. I was a father too. And I can imagine how it would feel if my children were to resent me in these circumstances. So, that is why it is easy for me to forgive you, I have the perspective of a father. Naruto said to her sincerely, taking her hand. Kushina nodded tremulously. There was no other word to describe her son. Naruto was extraordinary, a gift to soothe this hate-filled world. He was precious. She would be there for him and help him with his dreams and goals however lofty they may be, she promised herself as his mother. They stayed up late into the night, exchanging the details of their lives. Getting to know each other. Naruto had someone he could truly call his family, besides his granddaughter Tsunade. He had a mother for the first time in 2 lives, and he was happy. The trees of Kanoha seemed to shine benevolently and flowers began to bloom in the village. The flowers are blooming, said Jiraiya, while adjusting the anti-intruder ceiling array. The Sandaime and Kakashi looked at the trees in the park and they seemed healthier. Jiraiya was right. The withering flowers of the park bloomed. Naruto whispered the third, recognition on his face. Kakashi looked at him questioningly. He is happy. It always happened during my childhood. When I learned the first Doton Jutsu he taught me, the earth wall, he was so happy that Konoha looked like Kami's garden for a month or so, said Hiruzen, the memories of his childhood lighting up his old face. Jiraiya and Kakashi listened to the story like little kids listened to Eureka at the academy. Harsh winters make the village desolate and shorn of its beauty. It happened once more when he was carrying a 2-year-old Tsunade in his arms, she was so little, he was walking to the Hokage tower. A snowflake fell on Tsunade's cheek, and she was crying, Ajisen. From the sudden cold. It was her first word. Hashirama-sama was crying tears of joy and the ground just thawed, responding to him and converting itself into a lawn. Spring arrived a month early in Konoha that year. I remember after that, the children used to make him happy deliberately, and flowers would bloom in Konoha. That Konoha was lost though, when he passed during the First War. Finished Sarutobi. Jiraiya looked entranced by the story. Kakashi looked reverent. He has returned now, sensei. The flowers of Konoha are blooming again, said Jiraiya. Hiruzen looked around them, noting the returned beauty of the park. So they are, he said with a wide smile on his face. 15 days later. Naruto and Sasuke walked silently to Naruto's apartment. So your training is over, team? Asked Naruto, breaking the silence. Yes, thank Kami. I know you and Kakashi told me to take the remaining 2 days off to recuperate, but can't I do it myself? I just want to be lazy for the next few days, believe it or not. Naruto looked at him seriously. There is someone I want you to meet, Sasuke. Someone very important to both you and me. Sasuke looked at him quizzically but followed silently as Naruto opened the door to his apartment. Someone important to him, what did that mean? The first thing he saw when he followed Naruto into his apartment was that it was cleaner. The walls were gleaming, the books were arranged, the bedding was new, it was a different place altogether. But what shocked him even more was the beautiful woman with long red hair, whose face resembled Naruto's greatly. It was as if she was his mother. Wait, his. Who are you? He asked the woman. Naruto just stood to the side, watching them silently. She walked up to him silently and began introducing herself softly. Hello Sasuke-kun, I am Uzumaki Kushina. I am Naruto's mother and your godmother. Uchiha Mikoto was like a sister to me. Sasuke stared at Kushina with pure shock upon his face. Where were you all this time? It had taken them the better part of 3 hours to explain to Sasuke the story of the Namikaze family, leaving out Naruto's secret. He sat stunned at the end of it all. So you are the heir of the Yondaime and Red Death of Konoha? No wonder you are so strong. Naruto nodded. We were raised together for 2 months, Sasuke. Mikoto-san took care of me along with you when Kao-san was incapacitated. Sasuke's face softened considerably at this. Do you mind if I come over sometimes to talk, Kushina-san? Sasuke asked hesitantly. Kushina hugged them both to her tightly, Sasuke squirming with discomfort at being within Naruto's proximity. Not at all, Sasuke-kun. You are as good as a son to me. Naruto sighed with happiness as the family of 2 became 3. He knew it, now. Sasuke would become more powerful than Madara in due time. Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto would bring the everlasting peace and understanding Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama could not. He knew it well. Council room, Kanoha. Greetings, Adano, greeted the Hokage. The Raikage had arrived 2 days back and submitted a proposal on Kumo's behalf. Greetings, Hiruzen Dano. Let us get down to business. What is Konoha's response to Kumo's proposal? The council members looked at Hiruzen and nodded. Hiruzen responded. Konoha agrees to Kumo's proposal, Raikage Dano. The non-aggression pact is accepted by us in exchange for your aid, and will be valid for the next 3 years between our 2 nations. A nodded. The formalities will be complete by tonight. Will you not stay, Adano? Asked Hiruzen, hoping he would not. The Raikage staying while they executed their trap was a complication they did not need. His hopes were answered. I would like to, but cannot, Hiruzen Dano. I have a scheduled conference with the Mizukage in 5 days, so I cannot pause. I have faith in Yujito, though, she is quite strong. As you say, Adano. I hope our countries shall prosper with this newest treaty. Do not break the treaty, eh? I hope for that as well, Hiruzen Dano. The same to you, Hiruzen. Hiruzen watched as the muscular Kage collected his brother who was really annoying the Umbu with his so-called rap. A and B, they were strange but true brothers. It was time to make the final preparations for tomorrow's plan to work. They had polished the rough edges to the plan. They were ready to take out one of the biggest threats to the village. Naruto and Kushina ate their food in silence. They had discovered that they both shared a maniacal worship for ramen. So, Kao-san, all these days it has been only about me. Tell me more about what you did when you left me. Kushina's face scrunched up in pain at being reminded of that. She looked down in shame. I have clearance from the old man, if that is what you are worried about. As long as you have a good security seal array protecting us, you can tell me, which you do, he continued obliviously. Kushina looked at Naruto. No, Naruto. I will tell you, you deserve to know. Ever since I left you, I was Konoha's diplomatic envoy and of course non-official spy to Kiri. I headed our intelligence there, just as Jiraiya-sama does for the rest of the nations. We were getting disturbing reports from Kiri back then, and I was sent there to assess the situation. I managed Konoha's front there for the next 5 years, after which the Yondaime Mizukage Yagura spawned a civil war with his persecution of bloodlines. Naruto listened with rapt attention. I don't need to tell you of the horrors of a war, you are Hashirama after all. Anyway, I was instructed to lend aid to the rebel forces as Kanoha is a great supporter of bloodlines and did not want any more of them lost. Then I rescued an extremely strong Jounin, Mei Terumi, who is about 6 years younger than me. Her bloodlines, lava release and boil release make her a feared opponent. She is part Uzumaki. Naruto felt happier. The Uzumaki clan still thrived. The most resilient and long-lived clan would take more than a single war to wipe out, he thought with pride. The 2 of us led the bloodline faction for 3 long and bloody years of internal war. We managed to kill Yagura in the end, though. In fact, by the time I got Hiruzen's call, Mei was already the new Mizukage. Naruto nodded. His mother was a very strong kunoichi indeed. I am impressed, Kao-san. Do you think I can meet this Terumi Mei of yours? Kushina looked elated. Of course, Naruto. She used to be raving about how she wanted to meet you. We became such close friends that I even told her the truth about you being alive, just like me and Mikoto. At least I can do this for you, you need none of my training. What do you mean? Asked Naruto, tilting his head. What can I teach Senju Hashirama? I thought of training you in the Fuinjutsu of the Uzumaki and the Kenjutsu developed by me exclusively, but I cannot have everything I suppose. Said Kushina tearfully. We can still spar together, Kaa-san. I just did not bring it up because I have no wish for my first clear memories of my mother to be ones of conflict. We can spar after the finals, though. I can always learn from someone of your stature. Kushina looked happier. She suddenly brought up a topic that was very painful for Naruto. Do you like any girls, Naruto? Any academy chicks gotten into your sensory field? She asked mischievously. Naruto let his pain show, which made Kushina go silent very fast. This was something he had shoved in the deepest recesses of his mind, lest it overwhelm him. I'm so sorry Musuko, did I say something? Oh. She got an understanding look on her face and felt like punching herself, hard. She always ran her mouth too much sometimes. Naruto looked her in the eyes and Kushina gasped. Those forest green eyes showed so much anguish that it froze her. He was still grieving for her? Kaa-san, please avoid that topic unless you wish to cause me pain. My heart shall forever belong to Mito and her alone. I can never even think about loving another woman as long as I am alive, said Naruto. Kushina nodded mutely. She should have never brought that up. Anyway, have you been given your team yet, Kaa-san? Kushina allowed the change in subject, and they dwelled upon the specifics of their roles during the invasion. Arena, Chunin exam finals. Naruto stood alongside Hiruzen disguised as Umbu, watching Sasuke and Gaara face off against each other in the first match of the finals. He reached his hand to his back and caressed the beautiful black Wakaizushi blade gifted to him by his mother. It felt so light strapped his back, so sharp. Sasuke had gotten one too, but he had gotten a katana. They were all ready. His mother and Jiraiya were patrolling outside Kanoha with their teams. Kakashi and his team were on guard in the stadium, as were all the Jounin. They had prepared as best as they could. The Kazekage came strolling towards his seat, his face covered by a veil. Naruto extended his senses to sample the Kazekage's chakra for the first time, and he was shocked. Beyond shocked. Clever, Orochimaru. Clever indeed. Orochimaru was masquerading as the Kazekage. The real Yondaime Hokage was probably dead. He cursed. Orochimaru's plan fell into place in his head like pieces of a jigsaw. He plans to use Suna and Oto to attack us simultaneously. Suna from within and Oto from without. Good that we divided our forces evenly. Naruto watched as the Kazekage and Hiruzen greeted each other, and sat on their respective seats. He bent down and whispered the truth to Hiruzen. The Sandaime's eyes widened in alarm and he whispered back in Naruto's ear. Warn Kakashi to be ready for this. Ask him to send a message to Kushina. Naruto nodded, concealed by his cat mask and disappeared and reappeared back again after a few moments. He had sent a wood clone with a message to Kakashi. A problem, Hokage? Inquired the Kazekage solicitously. Just a small adjustment to today's program, Kazekage, said Hiruzen lightly. Let us enjoy the show, Kazekage. It is my prized genin versus yours after all. They watched as Gaara just gave his trademark stare of death to Sasuke. Sasuke just smiled back. This seemed to have annoyed Gaara as sand poured out of his gourd and just shot towards Sasuke. But it was not really fast enough to keep up with the Sasuke who had made such progress with Shunshin. Every time Gaara lunged for him with sand, the Uchiha disappeared and appeared elsewhere. The crowd were going bonkers as they enjoyed their beloved, last Uchiha, make sport of the red-headed sand-using maniac. Naruto had warned Sasuke not to use genjutsu, though. It was of no use against Jinchuriki like Gaara, whose Byakuya was a psychopathic raccoon that induced fluctuations of its own in the host's chakra network constantly. Not conducive for genjutsu. Naruto saw what Sasuke was doing, though. It was a good tactic to dodge the sand and analyze Gaara's attack pattern and jutsu with his Sharingan. If he could predict those accurately, he wouldn't even need Shunshin to dodge. The team still wouldn't say how he got the third tomo of his Sharingan. He could feel the beginnings of exertions in the Uchiha's chakra flow. He couldn't keep up the Shunshin use forever. It was a rather draining jutsu that consumed a lot of chakra. Chakra that Sasuke was yet to develop. It was already impressive that he used it the way he did now. Gaara's irritation showed itself at last. "Stay still, Uchiha. Mother craves your blood." Kurama snorted with amusement in Naruto's mind. The Kyuubi had been rather silent as of late, allowing its container to deal with his tumultuous life by his own. He was hardly an expert at soothing humans, so he helped the best way he knew. He shut up. And Naruto was grateful for it. Kakashi only paid minimal attention to the match as he considered Naruto's message. He had sent an Umbu to warn Kushina and Jiraiya. His Umbu were undercover as civilians, and ready to respond at a moment's notice. The Jounin with him were ready as well. Kakashi watched as Sasuke stopped flashing around, and simply waited for Gaara to attack again. He had instructed his Umbu not to interfere with the Sandaime and Naruto. To ninja like them, more help would just be a hindrance. Kushina and Jiraiya met at the East Gate, their teams on reserve. Their sensors and scouts were constantly patrolling the territory within sight of Kanoha. "Kushina, did you get the message?" "Yes, Jiraiya-sensei. I worry for Naruto, he will be facing Orochimaru again so soon." Jiraiya snorted. "I wouldn't worry about the Gaki, Kushina. You know who he is." Kushina nodded, but still looked worried. "My team has found no indications of any invading Nin. What is Orochimaru up to? That team is unpredictable, if anything. We must be ready for anything, Kushina. You take north and east, I will take south and west." Kushina nodded in confirmation. "Hi, Jiraiya-sensei." They separated in a blur. Sasuke watched calmly as the sand shot towards him from multiple directions. He had the Jinhira key now. He could predict how he struck and could avoid with his greatly increased physical speed. The crowd gasped, stunned, as he neatly avoided Gaara's attacks as if he knew how they would hit a year ago. Running towards Gaara, he dodged even more sand attacks gracefully, his Sharingan spinning. His speed increased as he leaped high into the air, twisting cleanly to avoid Gaara's whip of sand. He landed right in front of Gaara and unleashed a hard punch to his face, well before his shield of sand could kick in. The sand user flew back hard, hitting the walls of the arena with a crunch. A bit of sand fell off his face, revealing the skin underneath. It seemed that his armor of sand had protected him. Sasuke disappeared and appeared in front of Gaara with a fast kick, but retracted at the last second when a dome covered the sand nin and extended spikes toward him. Not wasting a second, he appeared high upon the wall opposite Gaara and began concentrating chakra into his hand. The technique he was using could cut through anything. Naruto watched as Sasuke charged up his version of Kakashi's technique, Chidori. A sound of thousand birds chirping filled the air as blue lightning crackled in Sasuke's hand. The young Uchiha charged fast and hard at Gaara, causing the Suna Genin to extend those sand spikes at him. The Sharingan was too formidable, though, and allowed Sasuke to dodge the spikes and plunge his Chidori right through Gaara's so-called ultimate defense. A horrible scream filled the air as the sphere of sand encasing Gaara blew apart, revealing Sasuke with his hand right through Gaara's shoulder, near his heart. "No!" screamed Gaara's siblings. Naruto wasn't too concerned, though. A Jinhira ki would not die so easily. Sasuke pulled out his hand, spattering the blood of his opponent. Sure enough, Gaara's wound began to steam and close up. Soon, it was fully healed. The red-haired Jinhira ki looked furious beyond description. "Blood! My blood? I will kill you all!" he roared. Sasuke looked at him, wary of his bloodlust. The crowd seemed stunned. Naruto observed Orochimaru, as he sat by the edge of his seat waiting for something to happen. Gaara was obscured by a huge pillar of sand, blowing Sasuke away. Orochimaru signaled to someone, and Naruto could feel genjutsu being cast on the entire stadium, feathers falling everywhere. He and Hiruzen were abruptly enclosed along with Orochimaru by some sort of barrier that reached up high and had 2 layers. It was held by what looked like ridiculous teens, who situated themselves within the layers of the barrier. It had begun. The crowds were falling asleep, but Kakashi's team and the Jounin had dispelled the illusion. Kakashi and his team spread throughout the stadium, taking out the sand ninja mercilessly. The Konoha Jounin led their genin out efficiently to help in the protection of the village. Temari and Kankura were out fast, but Sasuke pursued them on orders from Shiranui Genma, the proctor who engaged the sensei of Gaara, Baki. Things were taking place too fast. Tanuki Niiri no Jutsu, came the shout from within the sand pillar. The sand dispersed, revealing the huge form of the one-tailed Baijuya, Shukaku. "I'm back!" roared the funky Baijuya. Gaara had released the sand demon at last. The Kazekage flew back, pulling off his veil. "Hello, Sarutobi-sensei and Naruto-kun," said the now-revealed Snake Sunin. "Orochimaru, my foolish student. You are really stupid to fight me here and now." "I wouldn't say that, Sarutobi-sensei. Look at Gaara, would you? What do you think will happen if Konoha takes a full-on Baijuadama?" he asked with glee. Naruto and Hiruzen looked at Gaara, their eyes blazing. Orochimaru signaled, and another barrier separated the two from him, protecting him while he summoned. He slammed his palms together. "Kukiyos, Edo Tensei." Two coffins began to rise out of space-time rips in the ground. Hiruzen watched silently, as he knew Naruto would hold the Shukaku off till help arrived. Then they could deal with Orochimaru and his summons. Naruto flared his chakra and watched the Shukaku as it turned its attention to the battle on the roof. "You are the one annoying me. I found someone to kill," yelled the Baijuya, and opened its mouth, gathering enormous chakra. Dimly Naruto noted Orochimaru completing the Edo Tensei. Just a little more time for her to show up. Yujito could conceal herself, but Madatabi could not conceal herself from Kurama. "Kurama, is Madatabi here yet?" "Yeah. I can feel her Jinhira changing into the tailed state. You will have to hold off that Baijuadama Shukaku has aimed at you before she deals with the raccoon." Naruto nodded. Shukaku's strength had nothing on Kurama. He bit his finger, and began his summoning. "Kukiyos, Sanju Urashouman." The tailed beast bomb of Shukaku exploded towards the podium in a hail of destruction, but was intercepted by 3 demonic gates and a blinding explosion ensued. Orochimaru was impressed. To summon the Rashouman at such an age was a daunting prospect. When the air cleared, Shukaku was facing another Baijuya. The two-tailed Hellcat, Nyabai. Yujito had come through, Naruto thought with relief. Hiruzen had made a really good deal with that Raikage. Naruto had to act fast to keep the village from being destroyed. He had to contain the Baijuya within the stadium and conserve his strength for Orochimaru's summons, which were nearly out. "Mokuton, Yakusei no Mokusei Hankyo." Massive wooden pillars arched from the edges of the arena to confine the two Baijuya in a huge hemisphere of wood. The stadium and city were safe for a while. Naruto turned to Hiruzen. "It is done, Hiruzen. Shukaku will be defeated by Madatabi before he breaks out of sphere." "Oh, and hello again, Orochimaru." Orochimaru was looking at Naruto with absolute amazement on his face. "Mokuton, well, no matter. Meet your former teachers again, sensei." The coffin's door fell, revealing 2 figures. Senju Tobirama, and Uzumaki Mito. Sound ninja were pouring into Konoha territory in a concentrated assault on the east side, about 200 of them. A massive snake appeared with them, going straight for the gates. "Katon, Gureyuka no Jutsu!" yelled Kushina, breathing out a huge dragon of fire. The snake was completely swallowed by the fire dragon, and was vaporized. Kushina's team nodded appreciatively. "Team, engage the sound ninja. We cannot let them enter Konoha. Let's go." Kukiyos no Jutsu. There was a large puff of smoke, and Jiraiya stood upon the toad boss, Gamabunta, facing the huge snake and the Oto ninja attacking them. "No time for whining, give me oil Bunta." The boss toad looked annoyed, but did as he was told. "Katon, Gameundan." The stream of fire from Jiraiya ignited the torrent of oil spewing out of Gamabunta's mouth, creating a massive conflagration of fire. The snake summons was done for, but the Oto ninja defended themselves well. "Suton, Suijin Heki." roared 20 Oto ninja, neutralizing Jiraiya's attack with a collective water wall. They charged in formation and were engaged by Jiraiya's team in front of Konoha's south gate. The battle was joined. Kakashi and his team moved through the village, encountering the sand ninja within and neutralizing them. It was a brilliant plan they had devised. The hunters were now the hunted. Kakashi Teiko. That is Jiraiya-sama's summon, meaning he should be facing a considerable force. Do we assist? Questioned Uzuki Uejo urgently. No. Jiraiya-sama and Kushina-san need no assistance. The two of them are powerful enough to defeat entire battalions, but their wide-range jutsu will cause us collateral damage, which is why they are holding back. They can take care of themselves and their teams. His own team nodded. What is the status of the fight in the stadium? Questioned Kakashi. Naruto-san has confined Ichibai and Naibai Jinhiriki with Mokuton. Said Tenzo, hardly able to believe it, but continued. He and Hiruzen-sama are currently fighting Orochimaru and what looks to be the Untitled Hokage and Uzumaki Mito. Kakashi was extremely concerned for Naruto. If there was any way to thoroughly upset him, this was it. But he had his orders and he had to defend the village. Thank you, Tenzo. Leave your wood clone right where it is to give us direct updates. Since most of the Sunanin are taken care of, we will stand by as a reserve and help where we can, inside the village. He added pointedly. Hi, Teiko. Naruto stared at the forms of his brother and wife with tears in his eyes. Tobirama looked just the way he remembered, blue armor, long spiky white hair. That head guard he had liked so much, he was barely holding himself together as he saw his dead little brother in the world again. But when his eyes alighted upon his wife, the tears suddenly started falling. Fuinjutsu tags as her ear ornaments, white kimono and looking like an angel. He had forgotten how beautiful she was. Hiruzen was not looking at his former superiors, but at Naruto. The pain this reunion must be causing him, this would bring out the secrets Orochimaru did not need to know. He had to deal with Orochimaru as Naruto dealt with his reanimated family. The barrier between the adversaries dissolved, but the one confining them on the podium remained, held by the four Oto ninja. Orochimaru looked intrigued by Naruto's reaction to his summons. Something did not add up here. He walked to Mito and Tobirama and thrust Kane with Fuinjutsu tags into their heads. Their bodies started steaming, and they began to gain the complexion they had possessed in their prime. Tobirama and Mito looked up and saw their two opponents. Saru, you have grown old. Said Tobirama dispassionately. Hiruzen-chan, you seem like an ancient monkey. I seem to remember you telling me as a little boy that you would never become older than 12 years, Mito laughed happily. Naruto's heart quickened at hearing his wife laugh again. He couldn't even speak, looking at her. Then it struck him. Orochimaru, you idiot. Naruto shook his head pityingly. Mito glanced at him, as did Tobirama. Who are you, youngster? Tobirama asked in a stern voice. Naruto was incensed, his little brother calling him little? Orochimaru was watching the byplay interestedly. Naruto flared his chakra considerably, and the tiles of the roof were cracking and floating away in pieces. Hiruzen and Orochimaru were doing the same but were drowned by Naruto's strength. Enough conversation, old people. Kill the boy, Mito-san. Tobirama, attack the old man, Kanoha will burn under my hand. But nothing happened. Tobirama and Mito were staring at Naruto, their eyes wide. You have the same chakra as my brother, boy. How is that possible? Asked Tobirama. Mito was staring at him amazed. Naruto sighed, she had still not deduced the truth. A fight such as this was no place for a reunion such as theirs, no matter how much he wished it. What? What is happening? Kill them! Screamed Orochimaru, who was looking frantic. Mito looked at Orochimaru with an intrigued look on her face. So, you are the one who brought me back with Edo Tensei. You brought me back at full strength, while you suppressed Tobirama's. Youngster, you underestimate the wrong people. Said Mito, shaking her head. A dense grey chakra was rolling off her, causing ripples in the air. Bringing me back was foolish. If you wanted me to attack Kanoha, you did well to shut Tobirama's emotions, but leaving me with complete control of mine was your last mistake. The Kane and Mito floated back out and was crushed into smithereens. Naruto's chakra was saturating the air in a terrible joy as he watched his wife cast off Orochimaru's weak bindings. Hiruzen was watching disbelievingly. He had no idea of Mito-sama's strength. Orochimaru was looking very disturbed at this unexpected turn in events, and he held up a half-ram seal. Tobirama walked forward as if he were on strings and ran at Hiruzen, while Orochimaru was trying to get Mito back under his control, cursing all the while. Hiruzen, hold off Tobirama, will you? I will deal with Mito and that foolish student of yours. Hiruzen nodded and disappeared, meeting the Untitled for a fierce bout of taijutsu in the air. Naruto stared at Mito, who was making various hand seals, fast. He recognized this technique well. It was incomplete. He had made her promise never to use it again because of the consequences. Why was she? Fuinjutsu, Junsuna Sekai no Kaiho. Liberation of the pure world. The counter she had devised when Tobirama had made Edo Tensei. Only she understood enough to use it. It was so impossibly complex that not even Tobirama could understand the seals. Orochimaru watched open-mouthed as Mito not only threw off his binding like it was nothing, but was actually returning to the living world. He had miscalculated terribly. Mito's body, which had seemed unnatural and otherworldly, was changing. She got color back in her cheeks and the spark of life returned to her eyes. Naruto was thanking Kami with every fiber of his body. His wife was somehow, inexplicably returned to him. How could that technique have this effect? How? Sputtered Orochimaru. Mito took in her first breath again, an expression of joy upon her face. Hashirama-kun made me promise never to research this technique further, as its price was death. It is an incomplete counter to Edo Tensei, and its price for bringing back a soul from the pure world is death for the caster. Orochimaru had a look of comprehension upon his face. I have to thank you for bringing me back in the prime of my youth, youngster. When I used the liberation of the pure world, my soul, which was between worlds, suffered what might be called a reverse death, bringing me back from the pure world to here. It is a matter of balance. Orochimaru turned to the Sound 4 with absolute frustration upon his face. Release the barrier and be ready to run. The invasion is not going as expected. Orochimaru-sama. The four looked uncertain. Naruto watched them with interest, which was counterintuitive. Why would they want to stay in a fight they would die in? Hiruzen sent a large torrent of white-hot fire at Tobirama, who easily stopped it with water. At the same time, the dome of wood holding both Jinchuriki exploded, revealing two figures upon the ground. Yujito was standing over an unconscious Gaara. The arena was completely destroyed and looked more like a massive crater. Naruto appeared beside Mito, shelving his high emotions. He had to deal with Orochimaru first and only then reunite with Mito. Well, Orochimaru, your ninja cannot release the barrier, your work I presume, Mito-chan. Mito was puzzled at being addressed so affectionately. There was something very familiar about the blonde, besides his possession of Hashirama's chakra and bloodline. Something that made her heart beat faster. She looked at Orochimaru. Indeed. Do you think I would let you leave so easily, youngster? I don't take kindly to people who try to destroy my husband's legacy. Orochimaru looked like a cornered animal. You are truly powerful, Mito-san. Hiruzen appeared alongside Naruto and Mito, looking at them as if all his dreams were come true. I need to face Orochimaru myself, Naruto. Naruto sighed. Can you handle him and Tobirama together? Yes, Tobirama-sensei is not at full strength. Leave things here to me. Naruto nodded. Tell Tobirama nothing, I don't want him to be in turmoil. Hiruzen nodded. The Sound 4 looked like caged rats. Orochimaru's anger was palpable. Naruto turned to Mito. Come, Mito-chan. Let me explain to you how I am the exact same as your husband on the way. Kanoha needs our assistance. You can get through the barrier, I assume. Mito nodded. Easily. Naruto extended his hand to her and Mito took it. Mito's Fuinjutsu ornaments glowed and the couple just flashed through the barrier as if it didn't exist. Hiruzen turned to Orochimaru and Tobirama, preparing himself to correct the mistake he had made a decade ago. Jiraiya and Kushina met at the south gate, looking worse for the wear. Their teams had managed to completely eradicate the invading sound ninja. Jiraiya-sensei, we have several wounded on our team. Can you lend us more medics? Jiraiya nodded, ordering his medics to heal Kushina's wounded. The battle had extremely fierce, but their plan had been good enough to grant them victory. Of course, having S-class ninja lead the defenders never hurt. How do you think Naruto is doing? Kushina asked. He will be fine, he has regained a considerable portion of his old strength and you know that is no laughing matter. Kushina seemed relieved with Jiraiya's reassurances. They watched as their teams recuperated from the fierce battle. They could not re-enter Kanoha till Orochimaru was dealt with. The village's perimeter had to be guarded till then. A young Konoha ninja suddenly appeared in front of the two S-class ninja, Kane piercing him all over his body. Kushina and Jiraiya appeared to steady him, yelling for medics. Jiraiya looked at the Chunin urgently. You are a border patrol ninja, aren't you? What happened? The ninja gasped out, IWA, it was IWA. About 2000, white explosion, dust everywhere, border guard overwhelmed. The medics were arriving. Kushina looked stunned, and Jiraiya shook the border patrol Chunin trying to keep him conscious. Hey kid, answer me, how far away are they? Half hour. Before he could ask any more questions, the medics came and dragged the boy away to be healed. Jiraiya looked at Kushina with apprehension on his face, which was mirrored by her. Of all the times for IWA to turn on us, no matter. We have little time for healing, Kushina. We have to reorganize the defense and hold till our reinforcements get here, send a message for them. Kushina looked determined and a little afraid. Not for herself or Jiraiya. They could survive. She was afraid that her team of Umbu, none of them tested in an open battle, would die. They were already weakened by the sound ninja. Hi, Jiraiya-sensei. By the boy's description it seems as if Oniki the fence-sitter himself is leading the IWA shinobi. It will need both of us to stop him from massacring Kanoha. Jiraiya nodded. They would be lucky to leave alive. Author's note. Alright, I keep getting these reviews on how Naruto is just being Hashirama and not himself. Let me tell you how I imagined it. I will argue in points. 1. When Naruto awoke his old life, he was but a child with a barely developed sense of self. He was still searching for who he was, as opposed to him as Hashirama who had little of such conflicts. Also remember that Naruto's life at that point was one of pain and abandonment, and his moronic self was just a mask. 2. A soul that has experienced misery naturally gravitates towards love. So if Naruto were to take solace from the love experienced by Hashirama, he would have to become Hashirama essentially, and his personality as Naruto would take a back seat. Not destroyed, mind you. It is a coexistence of both lives. I imagined myself in his situation. If I were to remember a past life, say X, would that be a focus for me, or would it be this life, the life which caused me to enter this world? In my opinion, I would define myself as Carlton and not as X. Indeed, X would be a significant part of me, but I would want to be Carlton no matter how old I was. Naruto forms his own bonds and experiences. His Hashirama personality will be tempered by his newer perspective. Chapter 7. Naruto and Mito stood opposite each other on top of the Hokage monument, on top of Hashirama's head ironically. A few months ago, and it awoke my old life in me. Since then I have been both Uzumaki Naruto and Senju Hashirama. Mito looked at him with a disbelieving yet desperately hopeful face. She had hoped for it the moment she had laid eyes on him. His chakra and emotions felt too much like Hashirama's. No one could replicate that much of a person unless it was the person himself. She needed proof, though. To erase all her doubts and assure her that it was indeed her beloved husband reborn, standing in front of her. I concede that you have my husband's chakra and bloodline, and you feel very familiar. Give me proof, please give me proof. Naruto looked at her, the joy shining bright on his face. I activated your seal on the Hokage's office, Mito-chan. Not enough, tell me something only I and Hashirama would know. Mito asked, feeling as if this were a dream. Naruto turned his back to her and observed the space above the monument. It was right here, wasn't it, Mito-chan? You told me we would have a son, we were alone and we had come here for our walk. The sun was rising, and I was so happy at the news. It makes me happy even today in this life to remember it. Tears were flowing down Mito's eyes. Hashirama-kun. Mokyuton, Kami no Niwa, said Naruto, creating the garden the exact same way he did all those years ago. The barren land above the Hokage monument was transformed. A lush green lawn spread over it and cherry trees sprouted everywhere, showering the reunited couple with their beautiful blossoms. Naruto had forgotten about Konoha's plight. It could wait. Then I went maniacal and started jumping around, creating a garden like this one everywhere, until you caught me with an immobilization seal and forced me to calm down. I didn't for around 3 hours, though, laughed Naruto nostalgically. Hashirama, said Mito yet again, rooted to her spot with utter joy. It was true, no one knew all those things except Hashirama. He really was reborn and in front of her. Tobirama was different though. He went outside the village for a good distance, and went even more ballistic than me. You should have seen him, Mito-chan. Mito was slowly walking towards him, hardly believing their good fortune. A second chance, it was a second chance for them. She could be with her beloved husband for an entire lifetime now. I can keep telling you of things only I would know, Tsunade's first word, calling me Ajizan, how I met my friend Madara for the first time on a river bank, my other dead brothers, Itama and Kawurama, and I can show you something unique to me. He turned and faced Mito, who had a constant stream of tears flowing down her face. Mito felt her heart quicken at the sight of him. He sported the markings of a sage, the same crimson ones Hashirama had possessed. The 2 concentric circles on the center of his forehead, the rings around his eyes and the 2 arcs down his cheeks. He was beautiful. She could sense the chakra flowing through his veins like a storm. It was a glorious feeling, to immerse her mind once more in his all-consuming chakra. It really is me, Mito-hime. She covered the distance between them at a run and flung herself into his arms, where she belonged. I missed you so much, Hashirama. Those years without you. She cried into his shoulder. We are together once more, Mito-chan, no one will ever separate us again. I don't like to see you in tears, Mito-chan, said Naruto stroking her back soothingly. She wiped her tears, still maintaining her embrace, and examined her husband properly in his reborn body. He was tall for his age, slightly taller than her with long and spiky blonde hair. He looked very handsome, as much as he did as Hashirama. But he exuded the same calm and power she always placed her faith in, Kanoha had placed its faith in. He released his senjutsu, the markings fading, and hugged her again tightly, unable to believe their luck, their hearts overflowing with their love. It was God himself in his infinite mercy, granting them such happiness. Arigato. Kakashi Teiko. We have bad news, a messenger from the perimeter teams, it seems IWA is attacking us with the Tsukikage leading them. 2000 IWA shinobi will be here with the fence sitter in a matter of minutes. Kakashi's eyes widened and he cursed. Of all the times. Tenzo, send half the team and Jounin to back up the perimeter division. IWA chose a bad time, most of our shinobi are out on missions. Now, Tenzo. The Umbu nodded and shot off. Kakashi glanced around the village and sighed. The job was done well and the village was in a state of complete lockdown. The academy students were safe, at least defending the village would be easier without villagers running around like headless chicken. Something upon the Hokage monument caught his attention. Trees were growing and a lawn was spreading beautifully. Naruto. What was Naruto doing, creating trees on top of monuments when the village was about to be attacked? He decided to go and find out for himself. Naruto and Mito were currently entwined around one another, pouring their love and desperation from years of separation into a single heated kiss. It was excellent. Mito had said she was physically around 17, and he himself was nearing 14. It was just fine. He owed Orochimaru's idiocy, the snake Sunin's greed for Mito to be at her strongest was his undoing. Naruto felt like he was in heaven. His wife's lips felt as soft as ever and her form was as soft as velvet and hard as steel at the same time. She was his light and reason. A throat cleared behind them, causing them to separate hastily in turn. Kakashi-sensei. said Naruto, blushing and irritated at the same time. Mito was watching amusedly. She could never get over him blushing. She had always teased him, called him the shy god of shinobi. Kakashi looked at Naruto, amazed, and hardly believing what he was doing. He was kissing Uzumaki Mito? That was his wife, but still. Naruto cleared his throat as well. Kakashi, meet my wife Uzumaki Mito, first Jinhuriki of the Kyuubi and the greatest sealing mistress the nations have ever seen. He introduced his wife proudly, taking her hand. Mito blushed faintly at his praise. Hashirama, stop doing that to him, he seems ready to faint. Naruto gave her a deadpan stare. He does that. Kakashi stared at the two legendary figures reunited. He felt so happy for Naruto, but that had to wait. They would need Naruto if they were to prevail in the coming battle. Naruto, IWA is about to attack us in a matter of minutes. We have no idea how they concealed themselves. Naruto exchanged glances with Mito. It is Onaki's Misagaku or no Jutsu, he can hide large numbers of people from view. Only Sensor Ninja or Uchiha can see through that, said Mito. Naruto looked at Mito. What do we do about Hiruzen, Mito-chan? He was always too self-sacrificing for his own good. He may do something drastic. Mito looked back at him. Hashirama, let Hiruzen correct his own mistakes. He can take care of a weakened Tobirama and that snake-like youngster easily. Naruto still looked worried about his student, but Kakashi settled the matter. Mito-sama, Naruto, we have no choice but to leave Hokage-sama to deal with Orochimaru. We need you both to defeat IWA as our shinobi presence in the village is at a low. Naruto looked torn, but nodded. Mito considered Kakashi. Where are they attacking? From the north and slightly from the east, they will be here soon. Naruto, please do not reveal too much of your strength, show enough to be considered borderline S-class, we will be too busy recovering from this to deal with other alarmed nations. Naruto nodded solemnly, put his arms around Mito's shoulders and looked deep into her eyes. Let us fight together once more, Mito-chan. Mito nodded in joy. Hashirama by himself was near invincible, but together they were truly invincible. Jiraiya and Kushina were standing together, waiting for the inevitable assault. They had delayed Iwa's arrival by setting certain wide-range traps, and gained about another half hour. They were seal masters, and they used every bit of their mastery to delay Onaki. We are as ready as possible. Kushina, you have to protect our shinobi from the lava-style attacks of the earth shinobi. It is said that Onaki's granddaughter possesses the powerful lava-style bloodline. Kushina nodded. I was never as good against IWA as against Kumo. They can disperse my Suton and Katon with their Doton easily, they have some very strong Doton users. Anyway, will you confront the Tsukikage alone? Jiraiya opened his mouth, presumably to say yes when a voice interrupted him. No, he won't confront him at all. Kushina and Jiraiya turned, staring with wide eyes. Standing behind them was Naruto, Kakashi, and a very beautiful young woman, who had red hair and held her son's hand. Kakashi disappeared with a shunshin, though, explaining that he needed to check on the shinobi. Naruto! Yelled Kushina, and pulled him into a crushing hug. Naruto's eyes were popping out. Kaa-san, stop, suffering, Tora. Kushina released him immediately, looking sheepish. What happened to the Sandaime, Naruto? He is fighting Orochimaru and Tobirama. I hope he is alright, his life force feels fine if a little dimmer. Naruto looked coldly at Jiraiya. And stop peeking at my wife, Ero-senin. Jiraiya's eyes went back to normal, looking anywhere but at Naruto. He knew who Naruto was, and he knew who his wife should be. How was she here though? Your wife? Asked Kushina, looking like she was punch drunk. Mito stepped towards her and said tenderly. It has been a long time, Kushina-chan, you have grown into a beautiful and strong Kunoichi. You make me proud. Kushina was awed. Mito-sama, you really are back. Mito looked pleased and happy. I am here to stay, Kushina-chan. My place is by my husband's side. She said, melting into his embrace. She could hardly stop touching him, to make sure this was all real. Naruto looked at Kushina, who looked like she was about to explode with questions. Jiraiya was busily writing down something in a notebook. "Meet my wife and your daughter-in-law Uzumaki Mito, Kaa-san," Naruto said seriously. Kushina looked extremely weirded out. She had no idea how to feel about this. Mito bopped him on his head. "Stop confusing everybody, Hashirama. Kushina-chan has already been in a battle, anyway, how much longer do we have?" Kushina shut away disordered feelings of her son who was married before she was born and answered. "Jiraiya-sensei's scouts say Onaki is leading his shinobi at a fast pace and will be here in another half hour. We set traps for him with a wide-range swamp seal, and a fire tornado seal. Lots of them. It won't stop the Tsukikage for long though, his dust release is too strong." Naruto put a hand on Kushina's shoulder. "Don't worry about Onaki, Kaa-san. I had such high hopes for him, but it seems Mew got to him after all. I guess I need to teach him again the same lesson Madara taught him." "Onaki fought Madara?" Jiraiya asked with amazement. Naruto nodded. "Not fought, exactly. No. More like got humiliated. His strength doesn't even register when compared to Madara or me. Hashirama, you are not at your old strength yet, perhaps half of it. I sense that you are growing steadily, but it will be some time till you are as strong as before. I estimate 3 years," said Mito with concern. "I am strong enough, besides I have you," he said. Mito laid her head on his shoulder, causing him to encircle her in his embrace yet again. Jiraiya went back to his note-taking and Kushina watched her legendary son and his wife with mixed feelings. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the ground. They saw a shinobi floating high above the ground and IWA ninja poured out in their hundreds in 4 groups. 3 were close, and 1 was quite a distance to the left. "Kaa-san, Ero-senin, and Kakashi-sensei, you go and deal with 3 groups with all our shinobi. Leave Onaki and that 4th division to us, I will teach that brat not to turn on Kanoha," said Naruto, wisdom and authority in his eyes. They nodded rapidly. It was better than they had hoped for. Disappearing, they led the charge of the gathered Konoha shinobi and met IWA with a thunderous crash. He could go and wipe out the lot of them with Mokuton, but he did not really want to slaughter them to the last man unless they left him no other choice. Madara had always called him soft-hearted, but that was just how he was. No, only Onaki remembered the absolute power he had wielded with the wood release. These IWA shinobi needed something they feared more than just fairy tales to confront them, if they were to be made to flee from conflict. Naruto gathered his chakra, a shining silver aura manifesting around him. Mito too gathered her strength, a rippling grey chakra forming around her. The legendary couple looked at each other and disappeared towards battle. Onaki watched the ensuing battle from high in the air. This was his chance to take out Kanoha. As expected, the son in Jiraiya, the wife of the cursed Namikaze, and that Sharingan-wielding nightmare were cutting through his forces like hot knife through butter. He smiled grimly. Konoha's newest generation of shinobi were not battle-tested. They made elementary mistakes and paid for it with death. His own shinobi were decimating the Konoha forces in return. 2 S-class ninja and 1 borderline S-class, however strong, could not stand up to 2,000 highly trained war veterans. Let alone those newbies Konoha had sent out for its defense. The 3 divisions were engaging Konoha's forces successfully and the 4th division was expected to encircle around them, and they would crush Kanoha. He saw the 4th division beginning to move to surround the Konoha shinobi, but they suddenly stopped. Why did they stop? He floated downwards quite a bit, and saw something that surprised him to no end. A blond boy, tall for his age, and a beautiful young woman in white face his legion of shinobi as if they did not have a care in the world. Either these youth were very strong, or were just buying time. He decided to intervene only if things got bad for the 4th division. They still had time to execute the final maneuver. Mito stood alongside her husband as they stared at the 500 shinobi in front of him. Kakashi asked you not to show your true strength, only about S-class, how will you handle this? Naruto drew his Wakizashi and held it to his side at an angle, reinforcing the blade with pure earth chakra and increasing its tensile strength tenfold. They fear a yellow flash, so they will fear me. He had mastered the use of Shunshin when he was but a boy. Dedicated long months only to it, It was short range and worked only by sight, but it would do for this battle. Mito-chan, defend me against long-range attacks. I would do it myself, but you know I must restrict my show of strength. Mito nodded. Go, Hashirama. Naruto nodded and disappeared with a yellow flash, and appeared in front of the IWA ranks. Then he began to slaughter them before they could even blink. Oniki could hardly believe his eyes. Ranks upon ranks of his shinobi were falling like flies, not even able to react. He strained his eyes, and saw something that chilled him to the bone. A flash of yellow moving across the stunned ranks, almost too fast to even spot. He was killing them with impunity, this had to stop. He was not as fast as the Namikaze Butcher, but he was fast enough. Pure white energy began gathering itself between his palms, shaping itself into a three-dimensional petal. This threat would be eliminated soon. Kushina, Jiraiya, and Kakashi were upon a small hill, watching the battle unfold. They had put up a barrier seal to recuperate and consider their next move. Their teams were fighting well enough, but it was obvious they would have to retreat back to Kanoha soon enough. These IWA shinobi seemed handpicked, they were probably the top tier of Iwa's shinobi. All of them were probably A rank or high B rank. Some were IWA Umbu. That made it hard for them to kill their enemies. Kushina had fought many battles, but she had not faced an army of high-level shinobi. IWA had staked much on its assault. Kushina suddenly heard something that froze her heart and made Kakashi and Jiraiya turn towards the voice in disbelief. It is the yellow flash of Kanoha. Run. They saw the division Naruto and Mito-sama had gone to confront running back to the main force helter-skelter. Behind the rapidly retreating battalion, she saw something amazing. Barely discernible flashes of yellow, rapidly taking out the retreating shinobi of IWA. Minato! Said Jiraiya in wonder. Kushina looked heartbroken as her son flashed around rapidly, taking out his father's enemies. He was so fast, reminding her painfully of Minato. Minato, if only you could see our son. Naruto is using their own fear against them. Said Kakashi with admiration. But he too was rattled at how much Naruto reminded him of his sensei as he used the Shunshin. Jiraiya pointed to a glowing white light above Naruto's general area. It's Oniki, he is using dust release against Naruto. He must be really scared by the reappearance of the yellow flash to go that far so fast. Kushina looked very worried. My baby. Mito saw her husband stop and resheath his blade as he watched the remnants of the battalion run back to the main force. He had surprised her with his situational awareness, a legacy of this lifetime, she thought. She followed the line of her husband's sight and saw Oniki preparing to launch dust release. No you don't, Oniki. Oniki thrust his hands toward Naruto. Jinten, Genkai Hakuri no Jutsu. A huge column of white light descended from Oniki's position in the skies towards Naruto, ripping through the air at an unbelievable speed. Mito appeared next to her husband and slammed her palms together. Fuinjutsu, Ryashi Firu Tashirua. Naruto watched as his wife countered Oniki's attack with a particle filter seal. Her own innovation, her proficiency with seals really astounded him. Oniki's white light just dissipated into shining embers falling harmlessly onto the floor. Naruto looked at Mito and nodded with admiration for her as Oniki looked at them with indecision, and floated back to his own army. Disengage. Kushina watched as Oniki's attack was dispersed by Mito-sama, and the Tsukikage floated back to his own army ordering them to disengage. The Konoha shinobi too disengaged, and within a short while the battle lines were formed once more, Konoha facing IWA. They were outnumbered 2-1, and they could hold out from inside the village. Of all the times for Kanoha to have so many of its shinobi out on missions. She watched with relief as Naruto and Mito appeared next to Kakashi and Jiraiya. She went up to meet them. Oniki is forming up to attack again, we must retreat to Kanoha. Our forces are wounded and weakened and the reserves inside the city will help us outlast a siege. It is for the best, Kushina-san. IWA has lost about 500 of its own, and still has about 1,000 fresh shinobi. We on the other hand are down to 300, all of us weary. Jiraiya and Naruto acquiesced as well, albeit reluctantly. It would not take long for Oniki to reform his forces and attack with unfamiliar tactics. They passed the order. Onaki watched with satisfaction as the Konoha shinobi ran back to their village, but he could not let them escape to their village. He did not come here to lay a siege. My fellow shinobi, watch as Kanoha retreats. Do not fear the imitation yellow flash, as he is fleeing too. They must be at their limit. Do not let them escape to their hidey hole. His shinobi cheered, having reorganized. As one, they gave chase. Their forces were nearly through the gates and Kushina sighed with relief. Iwa was now within sight of them, roaring with anger and triumph the lot of them. Naruto suddenly stumbled, falling upon his knees. Mito cried out and stopped too, appearing by his side. Kushina joined them as well, seeing her son stumble. Jiraiya and Kakashi were watching worriedly from the battlements as the three stopped. The last of the perimeter guard was almost through. What's wrong, Hashirama? Iwa is almost upon us, unless you want to reveal our strength, we should go. Said Mito urgently. Naruto stood up, and looked at Mito and then at Kushina with an expression of piercing sadness, tears flowing down his face. The Iwa army was fully in view at the horizon, the trees in this area were sparse and it was almost full plateau. Suited for Iwa. What happened, Naruto? We have no time. Asked Kushina urgently. Hiruzen is dead. Orochimaru is fleeing the village, his chakra feels damaged and diminished. But I could feel Hiruzen's life force snuffed out like a candle. He is gone. Kushina and Mito gasped. Naruto was losing his expression of utter sadness, and it was being rapidly replaced with anger. As Hashirama he had lost a beloved student, but as Naruto he had lost the one man who had consoled him throughout his childhood. The one man who was always there for him no matter what. And they had taken him away. They had taken the one man who was dear to him in both lives, away. If it were not for Iwa's invasion, then he could have easily helped Hiruzen defeat Orochimaru. He faced the approaching invaders, and spoke to Mito. I could have protected him, if only these pests had not dared to attack Konoha. I will slaughter them, he said with absolute rage. Mito looked alarmed. When Hashirama was angered, there was no stopping him. No one could stop him. Even Madara feared his anger. Mito-chan, take Kao-san a safe distance away from me, I don't care about secrecy anymore, those who attack Konoha without any provocation will be erased. Kushina was too shocked as Mito nodded and kissed her son on his cheek, whispering for him to take care. She was grasped by the hand, and appeared next to Jiraiya and Kakashi in a series of shunshin, Mito dragging her. What is happening, Kushina-san, Mito-sama, why is Naruto out there alone? Asked Kakashi, concern upon his face. The reserve Konoha shinobi were lining the walls, readying themselves for the siege. Jiraiya, Kushina, and Kakashi however were alternating their glances between Mito and Naruto. Hiruzen is dead, killed by Orochimaru, the two males of the group gasped in grief. He is angered beyond measure, he blames Iwa for interfering. You three know just how much Hiruzen meant to Naruto in this life. How can he defeat so many shinobi? There are about 1,000 of them out there, not to mention Onaki. Said Jiraiya, his worry showing. Mito made a hand seal, creating a powerful barrier of silence around them. Watch, you have no idea of his true strength. He will show the world again why he was called God of Shinobi. Iwa will pay. He shouldn't reveal Mokuton. Said Kakashi. Would you rather be killed by Iwa than have my husband reveal his strength? Asked Mito. Kakashi had nothing to say to that. So he shut up. They watched as the Iwa nin rushed towards Naruto, intent on just obliterating him. Naruto walked forward calmly, his previous rage dissolving into deadly focus. The faint silver sheen around his body exploded into a very bright rippling glow, tinged faintly with red. He is using a little of Kyuubi's chakra. Said Mito. As if he were not strong enough already. The ground around Naruto started cracking and the pebbles on the ground were being crushed. The entire region felt his presence and anger. The Iwa shinobi rushing towards him just stumbled and went on their knees in their hundreds, unable to bear the power of the Yondaime Hokage being unleashed. Kushina watched open-mouthed as her son subdued his enemies by presence and chakra alone. She felt the enormity of it as if it were the crack of doom. The Konoha shinobi were also shivering in awe, staring at the boy they had believed to be a nuisance. What power? How powerful is he? Asked Jiraiya, barely hiding his amazement. Kakashi looked stunned as he watched his student walk even closer to the IWA army. They were still unable to move from the pressure. A beam of pure white light shot at him from the skies again. Oniki was taking action but to no avail. A massive hand of wood shot from the earth and swatted the jutsu away as if it were a bothersome fly. The Konoha shinobi seemed ready to faint. Some of the IWA shinobi did faint. Mokuton, whispers ran everywhere, both among the defenders and attackers. The battlefield was now rumbling, Naruto's chakra escalating still. The IWA shinobi had thrown off Naruto's oppression and were preparing their own jutsus. Naruto formed the serpent seal in preparation for his own. With a massive roar, 200 IWA shinobi in the front lines yelled out the name of their jutsu, joined by Oniki, who sent another dust release technique at Naruto. A massive bolt of white energy hurtled again towards Naruto, this time accompanied by multiple jutsus of all the elements. The air was so bright with the techniques being unleashed that it was impossible to even see the IWA army. The Konoha shinobi gasped in terror as the torrent of jutsu descended upon Naruto. Kushina uttered a silent prayer for her son, and Mito smiled. Mokuton Hii Jutsu, Jukai Kouten. Thousands of massive tree trunks exploded from the ground beyond Naruto, dispelling the torrent of jutsu like a predator dispels from its sight a herd of prey. The countless trees rushed towards the IWA shinobi, their huge size and force of release crushing them, killing them. Their multiple earth walls were pierced through by the force of the wood release, their lava techniques too small and ineffective to stop the thousands of massive trees descending upon them. Simultaneously a Rashomon rose to intercept Oniki's attack, exploding to take the impact. Naruto had stopped his technique and looked at the fleeing IWA shinobi. They came here for a slaughter? Then he would give them it. Mokuton, Makuryu no Jutsu. An absolutely huge dragon of wood about a third of Konoha's size blasted from the ground, its creator leaping upon its head. It then took flight and hovered over the fleeing IWA shinobi. It then dove full force into the now fully retreating army, crushing them under its weight. Its swiping claws and flailing body destroyed entire battalions of the enemy, and none of their jutsu even left a scratch upon it. Naruto scoffed. His wood dragon could even take a Baiju Udama from Kurama and toss it back. Their weak jutsu would not work. The remaining 500 tried to scatter in all directions, but it was in vain. 5 more wood dragons were born out of the earth, encircling the invaders and hemming them up in a circle of huge radius. The Konoha shinobi watched with reverence and downright worship as Naruto wielded their most sacred bloodline to rain destruction on the enemies of the village. Kushina and Jiraiya watched with amazement as they saw the full power of the Mokuton being wielded for the first time in nearly a century. Is this the power of the Mokuton? Kushina asked faintly. Kakashi was watching as if he did not want to miss even a single instant of the spectacle. Not really. Hashirama can go far beyond this, said Mito proudly. He was called God of Shinobi for a reason. Kushina dumbly looked back towards the now ending battle. Oniki was fleeing rapidly from her enraged son, taking who she assumed was his family with him. The IWA invaders were all but destroyed. Mokuton, Kakuje Korin. Naruto yelled, and a dense forest sprouted within the encirclement of his dragons, startling the clamoring 500 shinobi imprisoned within. Hundreds upon hundreds of huge flowers grew, spitting their pollen into the air. The trapped shinobi inhaled the lethal pollen, dying instantly in the hundreds. The circling wood dragons along with his own pounced upon the 100 survivors of the massacre. These men stood no chance. They were simply torn apart by the 6 dragons. Naruto looked around at the huge forest he had created and at the slaughtered bodies of the invaders in their hundreds with an impassive face. It was over so fast. They had to be destroyed, but he still grieved for it, his anger forgotten. War's wastefulness was beyond compare. He really hoped that Iwa's defeat would preserve the peace of Konoha. But the 1,000 he had slaughtered were loyal shinobi who had died for their village. They had to be returned to the earth. Doton, Yushin no Meizo. Kushina watched as the dead everywhere in the plateau were swallowed up by the earth, their traces wiped clean. Her son had just killed hundreds of enemies and buried them. Minato did not even compare to this kind of strength. You are indeed a god among shinobi, Hashirama-sama, thought Jiraiya, watching Naruto walk back with an immensely set expression. The gatekeepers Izumo and Kotetsu opened the gates with a deep bow. Naruto just entered wearily, and appeared in front of Kushina and Mito. Mito just ran up to him and hugged him hard, kissing him. "You fought like a god, my husband," she said proudly, looking at his face. It seemed that most of the Konoha shinobi had not recognized the young Mito in all the turmoil. They all bowed deeply to Naruto, Kakashi, and Jiraiya leading them, with nothing but awe and reverence on their faces. Naruto bowed back deeply as well, leading to resounding cheers through Konoha. "Let's go home, Mito-chan, Kaa-san. I trust you can handle the rest, Ero-senin." Jiraiya nodded. "Go home and rest for now, Kaki. You will doubtless be summoned later." Naruto nodded and disappeared with his wife and mother. He had a student in Hokage to mourn. Stories spread through Konoha like wildfire of the defeat of Iwa by a new god of shinobi wielding Mokuton again, reigniting the will of fire in its shinobi. They all stared together from the battlements at the huge forest that had been birthed during the battle and named it the Forest of the God. That's it for part 3. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.